Our travelers reached the rustic hostelry and alighted from their palfreys. "Ho, varlet!" cried he, who by his mien seemed the leader of the party. "Saucy knave! To us!" So saying, he knocked loudly with his sword hilt upon the open lattice. Mine host came forth at the summons, girding him with his tabard. "Give you good den, my masters," said he with an obsequious bow. "Bestir thyself, sire," cried he who had knocked. "Look to our steeds. And for ourselves give us of your best, for faith we need it." "Lackady, good masters," said the host, "my pool house has but a bare larder. I know not what to offer your lordships." "How now, fellow?" cried a second of the party, a man of pleasant countenance. "So servest thou the king's messengers, Master Tapton?" An instantaneous change overspread the landlord's visage. "Cry ye mercy, gentlemen," he said humbly. "An ye be the king's messengers, God shield his majesty. Ye shall not want for aught. The king's friends, God bless his majesty, shall not go off fasting in my house, I warrant me." "Then about," cried a traveler who had not spoken, a lusty trenchman by his aspect. "Hast aught to give us?" Mine host bowed again as he made answer, "What say you, good masters, to a squat pigeon pasty, some collops of venison, a saddle of veal, widgeon with crisp hog's bacon, a boar's head with pistachios, a basin of jolly custard, a Miller tansy and a flagon of old Rhenish?" "Gadzooks!" cried the last speaker. "That likes me well. Pistachios!" "Ah!" cried he of the pleasant countenance. "A poor house and a bare larder," quotha. "'Tis a merry rogue. So comes Martin asking Lewis Bloom." "Where's he?" says Lenehan. "Defrauding widows and orphans." "Isn't single quote to that effect," says John Wise, "what I was telling the citizen about Bloom and the ship fiend?" "That's so," says Martin. "Or so they allege." "Who made those allegations?" says Alf. "I," says Joe. "I'm the alligator." "And after all," says John Wise, "why can't a Jew love his country like the next fellow?" "Why not?" says JJ, "when he's quite sure which country it is. Is he a Jew or a Gentile or a Holy Roman or a swaddler, or what the hell is he?" says Ned. "Or who is he? No offense, Crofton. Who is Junius?" says JJ. "We don't want him," says Crofter, "the Angloman or Presbyterian." "He's a perverted Jew," says Martin, "from a place in Hungary, and it was he drew up all the plans according to the Hungarian system. We know that in the castle." "Isn't single quote to a cousin of Bloom the dentist?" says Jack Pyre. "Not at all," says Martin. "Only namesakes. His name was Veard, the father's name that poisoned himself. He changed it by deed, the father did. That's the new Messiah for Ireland," says the citizen. "Island of saints and sages." "Well, they're still waiting for their Redeemer," says Martin. "For that matter, so are we." "Yes," says JJ, "and every male that's born they think it may be their Messiah. And every Jew is in a tall state of excitement, I believe, till he knows if he's a father or a mother, expecting every moment will be his next," says Lenehan. "Oh, by God," says Ned, "you should have seen Bloom before that son of his that died was born. I met him one day in the South City markets buying a tin of news food 6 weeks before the wife was delivered." "Inventor S.A. Mayor," says JJ. "Do you call that a man?" says the citizen. "I wonder did he ever put it out of sight," says Joe. "Well, there were 2 children born anyhow," says Jack Pyre. "And who does he suspect?" says the citizen. "Gob, there's many a true word spoken in jest. One of those mixed meddlings he is. Lying up in the hotel pisser was telling me once a month with headache like a toddy with her courses. Do you know what I'm telling ye? It'd be an act of God to take a hold of a fellow the like of that and throw him in the bloody sea. Justifiable homicide, so it would." then sloping off with his 5 quid without putting up a pint of stuff like a man. Give us your blessing. Not as much as would blind your eye. Charity to the neighbor, says Martin. But where is he? We can't wait. The wolf in sheep's clothing, says a citizen. That's what he is. Vic from Hungary. A Hajj I call him. Cursed by God. Have you time for a brief libation, Martin? Says Ned. Only one, says Martin. We must be quick. J.J. and S.U., Jack. Crofton. 3 half-ones, Terry. St. Patrick would want the lion to gain up like Kindler and converges, says a citizen, after allowing things like that to contaminate our shores. Well, says Martin, rapping for his glass. God bless all, here's my prayer. Amen, says a citizen. And I'm sure he will, says Joe. And at the sound of the securing bell, headed by Crucifer with acolytes, thorifers, boat-bearers, readers, Austria, deacons and some deacons, the blessed company drew nigh of mitral abbots and priors and guardians and monks and friars, the monks of Benedict of Spoleto, Carthusians and Camaldolesi, Cistercians and Olivetans, Oratorians and Valumbricians, and the friars of Augustine, Bridgertons, Premonstratensians, Servi, Trinitarians, and the children of Peter Nolasco, and therewith from Carmel Mount the children of Elijah prophet led by Albert Bishop and by Teresa of Avila, Colston and friars, Brown and Gray, sons of Paul Francis, Capuchins, Cordeliers, Minims and Observants and the daughters of Clara, and the sons of Dominic, the friars preachers, and the sons of Vincent, and the monks of Wolstan, and Ignatius his children, and the confraternity of the Christian brothers led by the Reverend Brother Edmund Ignatius Rice. And after came all saints and martyrs, virgins and confessors, S. Cyr and S. Isidore Arter and S. James Aless and S. Focus O. Snop and S. Julian Hospitator and S. Felix de Cantalis and S. Simon Stilatz and S. Stephen Proto-Martyr and S. John of God and S. Friol and S. Loagard and S. Theodotus and S. Volmar and S. Richard and S. Vince. Paul and S. Martin Otto Die and S. Martin Otters and S. Alfred and S. Joseph and S. Dennis and S. Cornelius and S. Leopold and S. Bernard and S. Terence and S. Edward and S. Owen Caniculus and S. Anonymous and S. Eponymous and S. Pseudonymous and S. Homonymous and S. Paramus and S. Synonymous and S. Lawrence O'Toole and S. James O'Dingle and Compostelle and S. Columsel and S. Columba and S. Celestine and S. Coleman and S. Kevin and S. Brendan and S. Frigidian and S. Sin and S. Fickman and S. Columbanus and S. Gall and S. Furcy and S. Fenton and S. Fielker and S. John Nepomuc and S. Thomas Aquinas and S. Ives at Brittany and S. Mitchin and S. Herman Joseph and the 3 patrons of Holy Youth S. Aloysius Gonzaga and S. Los Costa and S. John Birchmans and the Saints Servizius and Bonifacius and S. Bryden S. Kieran and S. Canissa of Kilkenny and S. Yalatho Tom and S. Finbar and S. Papan Ubbalamiun and Brother Aloysius Pacificus and Brother Lewis Belcosis and the Saints Rose of Lehman of Viterbo and S. Martha of Bethany and S. Mary of Egypt and S. Lucy and S. Bridget and S. Attractla and S. Dimpton and S. Ida and S. Marian Calpensis and the Blessed Sister Teresa of the Child Jesus and S. Barbara and S. Scholastica and S. Ursula with 11,000 virgins. And all came with Nimby and Aureoles and Gloria, bearing palms and harps and with swords and olive crowns, and robes whereon were woven the blessed symbols of their efficacies, inkhorns, arrows, loaves, crosses, fetters, axes, trees, bridges, babes in a bathtub, shells, wallets, shears, keys, dragons, lilies, buckshot, beards, hogs, lamps, bellows, beehives, soup ladles, stars, snakes, anvils, boxes of Vaseline, bells, crutches, forceps, stag's horns, watertight boots, hawks, millstones, eyes on a dish, wax candles, aspergills, unicorns. And as they wended their way by Nelson's Pillar, Henry Street, Mary Street, Capel Street, Little Britain Street chanting the introit and Epiphania Domini which began with surge, Illumina and thereafter most sweet with the gradual alms which saith de salvavenient they did diverse wonders such as casting out devils, raising the dead to life, multiplying fishes, healing the halt and the blind, discovering various articles which had been mislaid, interpreting and fulfilling the scriptures, blessing and prophesying. And last, beneath a canopy cloth of gold came the Reverend Father O'Flynn attended by Malachi and Patrick. And when the good fathers had reached the appointed place, the house of Bernard Kiernan and Co., Limited, 8, 9 and 10 Little Britain Street, wholesale grocers, wine and brandy shippers, licensed for the sale of beer, wine and spirits for consumption on the premises. The celebrant blessed the house and since the mullioned windows and the groins and the vaults and the rises and the capitals and the pediments and the cornices and the engrailed arches and the spires and the cupolas and sprinkled the lintels thereof with blessed water and prayed that God might bless the house as he had blessed the house of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and make the angels of his light to inhabit therein. And entering he blessed the viands and the beverages, and the company of all the blessed answered his prayers. Adiutorium nostrum in nomen Domini. Qui fecit coelum et harum. Dominus vobiscum. Et cum spirito. And he laid his hands upon it, he blessed and gave thanks, and he prayed, and they all with him prayed, Deus, Caius verbo sanctificator omnia, benedictionem tomifunt supercreus istis. Et prestat quisquias secundum legum et voluntatem tom cum gratiarum actionis fuerit per invocationem sanctus menes tu incorporis sanitatem et animatudinem te auctri percipiet per Christum Dominum nostrum. And so say all of us, says Jack. Thousand a year, Lambert, says Crofton or Crawford. Right, says Ned, taking up his John Jameson. And butter for fish. I was just looking around to see who the happy thought would strike when be damned, but then he comes again letting on to be in a hell of a hurry. I was just round at the courthouse, says he, looking for ye. I hope I'm not. No, says Martin, we're ready. Courthouse, my eye in your pockets hanging down with gold and silver. Mean bloody scut. Stand as a drink itself. Devil sweet fear. There's a Jew for ye. Offer number 1. Cute as a shit house rat. 105. Don single quote Tito anyone, says a citizen, beg your pardon, says he. Come on boys, says Martin, seeing it was looking blue. Come along now. Don single quote Tito anyone, says a citizen, letting a ball out of him. It's a secret. And the bloody dog woke up and let it growl. Bye-bye all, says Martin. And he got them out as quick as he could, Jack Power and Crofton or whatever you call him, and him in the middle of them letting on to be all at sea and up with them on the bloody Jonathan car. Dash off with you, says Martin to the Jarvey. The milk-white dolphin tossed his mane and, rising in the golden poop, the helmsman spread a bellying sail upon the wind and stood off forward with all sail set, the spinnaker to larboard. The many comely nymphs drew nigh to starboard and to larboard and, clinging to the sides of the noble bark, the length of shining forms as doth the cunning wheelwrightman he fashions about the heart of his wheel the equidistant rays whereof each one is sister to another, and he binds them all with an outer ring and giveth speed to the feet of men whens they ride to a hosting or contend for the smile of ladies fair. Even so did they come and set them, those willing nymphs, the undying sisters. And they laughed, sporting in a circle of their foam, and the bark cleared the waves. But begob I was just lowering the heel of the pint when I saw the citizen getting up to waddle to the door, puffing and blowing with the dropsy, and he cursing the curse of Cromwell on him, bell, book and candle and Irish, spitting and spatting out of him and Joe and little Alf round him like a leprechaun trying to pacify him. Let me alone, says he. And begob, he got as far as the door and they holding him and he bawls out of him, 3 cheers for Israel. Ara, sit down the parliamentary side of your arms for Christ's sake and don't be making a public exhibition of yourself. Jesus, there's always some bloody clown or other kicking up a bloody murder about bloody nothing. Gob, it'd turn the porter sour in your guts, so it would. And all the ragamuffins and sluts of the nation round the door and Martin telling the Jarvey to drive ahead and the citizen bawling and Alf and Joe at him to wish and he on his high horse about the Jews and the loafers calling for speech and Jack Power trying to get him to sit down in the car and hold his bloody Johnny loafer with a patch over his eye start singing if the man in the moon was a Jew, 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 and a slut shouts out of her, "Hey, mister. Your fly's open, mister." And says he, Mendelssohn was a Jew and Karl Marx and Mercadante and Spinoza. And the Savior was a Jew and his father was a Jew. Your God. He had no father, says Martin. That'll do now. Drive ahead. Who's God? Says the citizen. Well, his uncle was a Jew, says he. Your God was a Jew. Christ was a Jew like me. God, the citizen made a plunge back into the shop. By Jesus, says he, I'll brain that bloody Jew man for using the holy name. By Jesus, I'll crucify him, so I will. Give us that biscuit box here. Stop. Stop. Says Joe. A large and appreciative gathering of friends and acquaintances from the metropolis and greater Dublin assembled in their thousands to bid farewell to Nagal Salgozir and Lepoti Verd, late of Messrs. Alexander Thoms, printers to His Majesty, on the occasion of his departure for the distant clime of Shazermanchbrojagulius Douglas, meadow of murmuring waters. The ceremony, which went off with great éclat, was characterized by the most affecting cordiality. An illuminated scroll of ancient Irish vellum, the work of Irish artists, was presented to the distinguished phenomenologist on behalf of a large section of the community and was accompanied by the gift of a silver casket, tastefully executed in the style of ancient Celtic ornament, a work which reflects every credit on the makers, Messrs. Jacob Agus Jacob. The departing guest was the recipient of a hearty ovation, many of those who were present being visibly moved when the select orchestra of Irish pipes struck up the well-known strains of Come Back to Erin, followed immediately by a Coach-Seas March. Tar-barrels and bonfires were lighted along the coastline of the Four Seas on the summits of the Hill of Howth, Three Rock Mountain, Sugarloaf, Brayhead, the mountains of Mourne, the Galties, the Ox and Donegal and the Sperrin Peaks, the Nagels and the Bogregs, the Connemara Hills, the Ricks of Imgillicuddy, Slivebody, Sliveburnett and Slivebloom. And the cheers that rent the welkin responded by answering cheers from a big muster of henchmen on the distant Cambrian and Caledonian hills. The mastodontic pleasure ship slowly moved away, saluted by final floral tribute from the representatives of the fair sex who were present in large numbers, while, as it proceeded down the river, escorted by a flotilla of barges, the flags of the ballast office and custom house were dipped and saluted, as were also those of the electrical power station at the Pigeon House and the Pool Beglight. Vishant Ladisra, Kudvsbaratin. Vishant Ladisra. Gone but not forgotten. Gob, the devil wouldn't stop him till he got hold of the bloody tin anyhow, and out with him and the little Alf hanging on to his elbow and he shouting like a stuck pig, as good as any bloody play in the Queen's Royal Theatre. Where's he till I murder him? And Ned and J.J. paralyzed with the laughing. Bloody wars, says I'll be in for the last gospel. But as luck would have it, the Jarvey got the nag's head around the other way and off with him. Hold on, citizen, says Joe. Stop. Begob, he drew his hand and made a swipe and let fly. Mercy of God, the sun was in his eyes or he'd have left him for dead. Gob, he near sent it into the county Longford. The bloody nag took fright and the old mongrel after the car like bloody hell, and all the populace shouting and laughing and the old tin box clattering along the street. The catastrophe was terrific and instantaneous in its effect. The observatory of Dunsink registered in all 11 shocks, all of the 5th grade of Mercalli's scale, and there is no record of extent of a similar seismic disturbance in our island since the earthquake of 1534, the year of the rebellion of Silken Thomas. The epicenter appears to have been that part of the metropolis which constitutes the Enskey ward and parish of St. Mitten, covering a surface of 41 acres, 2 roods and 1 square polar perch. All the lordly residences in the vicinity of the Palace of Justice were demolished, and the noble edifice itself, in which at the time of the catastrophe important legal debates were in progress, is literally a mass of ruins beneath which it is to be feared all the occupants have been buried alive. From the reports of eyewitnesses, it transpires that seismic waves were accompanied by a violent atmospheric perturbation of cyclonic character. An article of headgear since ascertained to belong to the much respected clerk of the Crown and Peace, Mr. George Fotchel, in a silk umbrella with gold handle with engraved initials, crest, coat of arms and house number of the erudite and worshipful chairman of Quarter Sessions, Sir Frederick Falconer, Recorder of Dublin, have been discovered by search parties in remote parts of the island respectively, the former on the 3rd basaltic ridge of the Giant's Causeway, the latter embedded to the extent of 1 foot 3 inches in the sandy beach of Holy Open Bay near the old head of Kinsale. Other eyewitnesses deposed that they observed an incandescent object of enormous proportions hurtling through the atmosphere at a terrifying velocity in a trajectory directed southwest by west. Messages of condolence and sympathy are being hourly received from all parts of the different continents, and the Sovereign Pontiff has been graciously pleased to decree that a special Missa Pro Defunctus shall be celebrated simultaneously by the ordinaries of each and every cathedral church of all the episcopal dioceses, subject to the spiritual authority of the Holy See, in suffrage of the souls of those faithful departed who have been so unexpectedly called away from our midst. The work of salvage, removal of debris, human remains, etc. has been entrusted to Messrs. Michael Mead and Son, 159 Great Brunswick Street, and Messrs. T. and C. Martin, 77, 78, 79 and 80 North Wall, assisted by the men and officers of the Duke of Cornwall's Light Infantry under the general supervision of H.R.H. Rear Admiral, the Right Honorable Sir Hercules Hannibal Habeas Corpus Anderson, K.G., K.P., K.T., P.C., K.C.B., M.P., J.P., M.B., D.S.O., S.O.D., M.F.H., M.R.I.A., B.L., MUS, DOC, P.L.G., F.T.C.D., F.R.U.I., F.R.C.P.I. and F.R.C.S.I. You never saw the like of it in all your born puff. Gob, if he got that lottery ticket on the side of his pole he'd remember the gold cup, he would so, but begob the citizen would have been lagged for assault and battering Joe for aiding and abetting. The Jarvey saved his life by furious driving as sure as God made Moses. What? Oh, Jesus, he did. And he let a volley of oaths after him. Did I kill him, says he, or what? And he shouting to the bloody dog, after him, Gary. After him, boy. And the last we saw was the bloody car rounding the corner and old sheep's face on it gesticulating and the bloody mongrel after it with his lugs back for all he was bloody well worth to tear him limb from limb. 105. Jesus, he took the value of it out of him, I promise you. When, lo, there came about them all a great brightness, and they beheld the chariot wherein he stood ascend to heaven. And they beheld him in the chariot, clothed upon in the glory of the brightness, having raiment as of the sun, fair as the moon and terrible that for all they durst not look upon him. And there came a voice out of heaven, calling, Elijah, Elijah. And he answered with the main cry, Abba, Adonai. And they beheld him, even him, Ben Bloom Elijah, amid clouds of angels ascend to the glory of the brightness at an angle of 45 degrees over Donahoe's in Little Green Street like a shot off a shovel. The summer evening had begun to fold the world in its mysterious embrace. Far away in the west the sun was setting, and the last glow of all too fleeting day lingered lovingly on sea and strand, on the proud promontory of dear old Hoth guarding as ever the waters of the bay, on the weed-grown rocks along sandy Mount Shire, and, last but not least, on the quiet church whence there streamed forth at times upon the stillness the voice of prayer to her who was in her pure radiance a beacon ever to the storm-tossed heart of man, Mary, star of the sea. The three girlfriends were seated on the rocks, enjoying the evening scene and the air which was fresh but not too chilly. Many a time and oft were they wont to come there to that favorite note to have a cozy chat beside the sparkling waves and discuss matters feminine, Sissy Caffrey and Eddie Boardman with the baby and the pushcare, and Tommy and Jackie Caffrey, two little curly-headed boys, dressed in sailor suits with caps to match and the name HMS Vallejo printed on both. For Tommy and Jackie Caffrey were twins, scarce 4 years old and very noisy and spoiled twins sometimes, but for all that darling little fellows with bright merry faces and endearing ways about them. They were dabbling in the sand with their spades and buckets, building castles as children do, or playing with their big colored ball, happy as the day was long. And Eddie Boardman was rocking the chubby baby to and fro in the pushcare while that young gentleman fairly chuckled with delight. He was but 11 months and 9 days old and, the still a tiny toddler, was just beginning to lisp his first babyish words. Sissy Caffrey bent over to him to tease his fat little plucks and the dainty dimple in his chin. "Now, baby," Sissy Caffrey said. "Say out big, big. I want a drink of water." And baby prattled after her, a jinka-jinka-jabbo. Sissy Caffrey cuddled the wee chap, for she was awfully fond of children, so patient with little sufferers, and Tommy Caffrey could never be got to take his castor oil unless it was Sissy Caffrey that held his nose and promised him the scatty heel of the loaf of brown bread with golden syrup on. What a persuasive power the girl had. But to be sure, baby Boardman was as good as gold, a perfect little dote in his new fancy bib. None of your spoiled beauties, Flora McFlimsy sort, was Sissy Caffrey. A truer-hearted lass never drew the breath of life, always with a laugh in her gypsy-like eyes and a frolicsome word on her chirarat red lips, a girl lovable in the extreme. And Eddie Boardman laughed too at the quaint language of little brother. But just then there was a slight altercation between Master Tommy and Master Jackie. Boys will be boys, and our two twins were no exception to this golden rule. The apple of discord was a certain castle of sand which Master Jackie had built, and Master Tommy would have it right go wrong that it was to be architecturally improved by a front door like the Martello Tower had. But if Master Tommy was headstrong, Master Jackie was self-willed too, and, true to the maxim that every little Irishman's house is his castle, he fell upon his hated rival and to such purpose that the old assailant came to grief and, alas to relate, the coveted castle too. Needless to say, the cries of discomfited Master Tommy drew the attention of the girl friends. "Come here, Tommy," his sister called imperatively. "At once. And you, Jackie, for shame to throw poor Tommy in the dirty sand. Wait till I catch ye for that." His eyes misty with unshed tears, Master Tommy came at her call, for their big sister's word was law with the twins. And in a sad plight he was too after his misadventure. His little man-o' war-top and unmentionables were full of sand, but Sissy was a past mistress in the art of smoothing over life's tiny troubles, and very quickly not one speck of sand was to be seen on his smart little suit. Still the blue eyes were glistening with hot tears that would well up, so she kissed away the hurtness and shook her hand at Master Jackie the culprit, and said if she was near him she wouldn't be far from him, her eyes dancing in admonition. "Nasty bold Jackie!" she cried. She put an arm round the little mariner and coaxed winningly, "What's your name?" "Butter and Cream." "Tell us who is your sweetheart," spoke Eddie Boardman. "Is Sissy your sweetheart?" "Now," tearful Tommy said. "Is Eddie Boardman your sweetheart?" Sissy queried. "Now," Tommy said. "I know," Eddie Boardman said none too amiably with an arch glance from her short-sighted eyes. "I know who is Tommy's sweetheart. Gertie is Tommy's sweetheart." "Now," Tommy said on the verge of tears. Sissy's quick mother guessed what was amiss, and she whispered to Eddie Boardman to take him there behind the pushchair where a gentleman couldn't see, and to mind he didn't wear his new tan shoes. But who was Gertie? Gertie McDowell, who was seated near her companions, lost in thought, gazing far away into the distance, was, in very truth, as fair a specimen of winsome Irish girlhood as one could wish to see. She was pronounced beautiful by all who knew her, though, as folks often said, she was more a Giltrap than a McDowell. Her figure was slight and graceful, inclining even to fragility, but those iron jelloids she had been taking of late had done her a world of good, much better than the widow Welch's female pills, and she was much better of those discharges she used to get that tired feeling. The waxen pallor of her face was almost spiritual in its ivory-like purity, though her rosebud mouth was a genuine Cupid's bow, Greekly perfect. Her hands were of finely vined alabaster with tapering fingers, and as white as the Mornison Queen of Ornaments could make them, though it was not true that she used to wear kid gloves in bed or take a milk-foot bath either. Bertha Supple told that once to Eddie Boardman, a deliberate lie, when she was black out at daggers drawn with Gertie. The girl chums had of course a little tiffs from time to time like the rest of mortals, and she told her not to let on whatever she did that it was her that told her she'd never speak to her again. No. Honor where honor is due. There was an innate refinement, a languid queenly hauteur about Gertie which was unmistakably evidenced in her delicate hands and arched step. Had kind fate but willed her to be born a gentlewoman of high degree in her own right, and had she only received the benefit of a good education, Gertie McDowell might easily have held her own beside any lady in the land, and have seen herself exquisitely gowned with jewels on her brow and patrician suitors at her feet vying with one another to pay their devoirs to her. Mayhap it was this, the love that might have been, that lent to her softly featured face at whiles a look, tense with suppressed meaning, that imparted a strange yearning tendency to the beautiful eyes, a charm few could resist. Why have women such eyes of witchery? Gertie's were of the bluest Irish blue, set off by lustrous lashes and dark expressive brows. Time was when those brows were not so silkily seductive. It was Madame Verdi, directress of The Woman Beautiful, a page of the Princess Novelette, who had first advised her to try a brow line which gave that haunting expression to the eyes, so becoming in leaders of fashion, and she had never regretted it. Then there was blushing scientifically cured in how to be tall to increase your height, and you have a beautiful face but your nose. That would suit Mrs. Dignam because she had a button one. But Gertie's crowning glory was her wealth of wonderful hair. It was dark brown with a natural wave in it. She had cut it that very morning on account of the new moon, and it nestled about her pretty head in a profusion of luxuriant clusters and peritoneals too, Thursday for wealth. And just now Eddie's words as a telltale flush, delicate as the faintest rose bloom, crept into her cheek. She looked so lovely in her sweet girlish shyness that of a surety God's fair land of Ireland did not hold her equal. For an instant she was silent with rather sad downcast eyes. She was about to retort, but something checked the words on her tongue. Inclination prompted her to speak out, dignity told her to be silent. The pretty lips pouted a while, but then she glanced up and broke out into a joyous little laugh which had in it all the freshness of a young May morning. She knew right well, no one better, what made Squinty say that because of him cooling in his attentions when it was simply a lover's quarrel. As per usual, somebody's nose was out of joint about the boy that had the bicycle off the London Bridge Road, always riding up and down in front of her window. Only now his father kept him in the evening studying hard to get an exhibition in the intermediate that was on, and he was going to go to college to study for a doctor when he left the high school, like his brother W. Wiley, who was racing in the bicycle races in Trinity College University. Little recked he perhaps for what she felt, that dull aching void in her heart sometimes, piercing to the core. Yet he was young, and perchance he might learn to love her in time. They were Protestants in his family, and of course Gertie knew who came first, and after him the Blessed Virgin and the Saint Joseph. But he was undeniably handsome with an exquisite nose, and he was what he looked, every inch a gentleman, the shape of his head too at the back without his cap on, that she would know anywhere something off the common, and the way he turned the bicycle at the lamp with his hands off the bars, and also the nice perfume of those good cigarettes, and besides they were both of the size too, and she, and that was why Eddie Boardman thought she was so frightfully clever, because he didn't go and ride up and down in front of her bit of a garden. Gertie was dressed simply, but with the instinctive taste of a very of dame fashion, for she felt that there was just a mite that he might be out. A neat blouse of electric blue self-tinted by Dolly dyes, because it was expected in the ladies' pictorial that electric blue would be worn, with a smart V opening down to the division and kerchief pocket, in which she always kept a piece of cotton wool scented with her favorite perfume, because a handkerchief spoiled the scent, and a navy 3/4 skirt cut to the stride showed off her slim graceful figure to perfection. She wore a coquettish little love of a hat of wittily nigger straw contrast, trimmed with an under brim of egg blue chenille, and at the side a butterfly bow of silk to tone. On Tuesday week afternoon she was hunting to match the chenille, but at last she found what she wanted at Clary's summer sales, the very slightly shop-soiled, but you would never notice, 7 fingers 2 and a penny. She lit it up all by herself, and what joy was hers when she tried it on then, smiling at the lovely reflection which the mirror gave back to her. And when she put it on the water jug to keep the shape, she knew that that would take the shine out of some people she knew. Her shoes were the newest thing in footwear. Eddie Boardman prided herself that she was very petite, but she never had a foot like Gertie McDowell, a 5, and never would ash, oak or elm, with patent toe caps and just one smart buckle over her heel-arched instep. Her well-turned ankle displayed its perfect proportions beneath her skirt, and just the proper amount and the more of her shapely limbs encased in fine-spun hose with his-spliced heels and wide garter tops. As for undies, they were Gertie's chief care, and who that knows the fluttering hopes and fears of sweet 17, though Gertie would never see 17 again, confounded in his heart to blame her. She had 4 dinky sets with a fully pretty stitchery, 3 garments and nighties extra, and each set slotted with different colored ribbons, rose pink, pale blue, mauve and pea green, and she aired them herself and bled them when they came home from the wash and ironed them, and she had a brickbat to keep the iron on because she wouldn't trust those washerwomen as far as she'd see them scorching the things. She was wearing the blue for luck, hoping against hope, her own color, and lucky too for a bride to have a bit of blue somewhere on her, because the green she wore that day week brought grief because his father brought him into study for the intermediate exhibition, and because she thought perhaps he might be out, because when she was dressing that morning she nearly the old pair her inside out, and that was for luck in a lover's meeting if you put those things on inside out, or if they got untied that he was thinking about you so long as it wasn't of a Friday. And yet, that strained look on her face, and gnawing sorrow is there all the time. Her very soul is in her eyes, and she would give worlds to be in the privacy of her own familiar chamber where, giving way to tears, she could have a good cry and relieve her pent-up feelings, though not too much, because she knew how to cry nicely before the mirror. "You are lovely, Gertie," it said. The pale light of evening falls upon a face infinitely sad and wistful. Gertie McDowell yearns in vain. Yes, she had known from the very first that her daydream of a marriage has been arranged, and the wedding bells ringing for Mrs. Reggie Wiley TCD, because the one who married the elder brother would be a Mrs. Wiley, and in the fashionable intelligence Mrs. Gertrude Wiley was wearing a sumptuous confection of gray trimmed with expensive blue fox was not to be. He was too young to understand. He would not believe in love, a woman's birthright. The night of the party long ago in Stowers, he was still in short trousers. When they were alone and he stole an arm round her waist, she went white to the very lips. He called her little one in a strangely husky voice and snatched a half-kiss, the first. But it was only the end of her nose, and then he hastened from the room with a remark about refreshments. Impetuous fellow. Strength of character had never been Reggie Wiley's strong point, and he who would woo and win Gertie McDowell must be a man among men. But waiting, always waiting to be asked, and it was leap year too and would soon be over. No Prince Charming is her beau ideal to lay a rare and wondrous love at her feet, but rather a manly man with a strong quiet face who had not found his ideal, perhaps his hair slightly flecked with gray, and who would understand, take her in his sheltering arms, strain her to him in all the strength of his deep passionate nature, and comfort her with a long, long kiss. It would be like heaven. For such a one she yearns this balmy summer eve. With all the heart of her she longs to be his only, his affianced bride, for rich as for poor, in sickness and health, till death us two part, from this to this day forward. And while Eddie Boardman was with little Tommy behind the push-chair, she was just thinking of the day ever come when she could call herself his little wife-to-be. Then they could talk about her till they went blue in the face, Bertha supple too, and Eddie, little spitfire, because she would be 22 in November. She would care for him with creature comforts too, for Gertie was womanly wise and knew that a mere man liked that feeling of hominess. Her griddle cakes done to a golden brown hue, and Queen Anne's pudding of delightful creaminess had won golden opinions from all, because she had a lucky hand also for lighting a fire, dredging the fine self-raising flour and always stirring the same direction, then cream the milk and sugar and whisk well the white eggs, though she didn't like the eating part when there were any people that made her shy, and often she wondered why you couldn't eat something poetical like violets or roses, and they would have a beautifully appointed drawing room with pictures and engravings in the photograph of Grandpapa Giltrap's lovely dog Gry-Owen that almost talked. It was so human, and chintz covers for the chairs and that silver those track in Clary's summer jumble sales like they have in rich houses. He would be tall with broad shoulders. She had always admired tall men for a husband, with glistening white teeth under his carefully trimmed sweeping mustache, and they would go on the continent for their honeymoon, 3 wonderful weeks. And then, when they settled down in a nice snug and cozy little home house, every morning they would both have brekkie, simple but perfectly served, for their own 2 selves, and before he went out to business he would give his dear little Whitby a good hearty hug and gaze for a moment deep down into her eyes. Eddie Boardman asked Tommy Caffrey was he done, and he said yes, so then she buttoned up his little knickerbockers for him and told him to run off and play with Jackie and to be good now and not to fight. But Tommy said he wanted the ball, and Eddie told him no, that baby was playing with the ball, and if he took it there'd be wigs on the green, but Tommy said it was his ball and he wanted his ball, and he pranced on the ground, if you please. The temper of him. Oh, he was a man already, was little Tommy Caffrey, since he was out of pennies. Eddie told him no, knowing to be off now with him, and she told Sissy Caffrey not to give him to him. "You're not my sister," Naughty Tommy said. "It's my ball." But Sissy Caffrey told Baby Boardman to look up high at her finger, and she snatched the ball quickly and threw it along the sand, and Tommy after it in full career, having won the day. "Anything for a quiet life," laughed Sis. And she tickled Tiny Tot's 2 cheeks to make him forget and played "Here's the Lord Mayor, here's his 2 horses, here's his gingerbread carriage, and here he walks chin copper, chin copper, chin copper chin." But Eddie got his cross as 2 sticks about him getting his own way like that from everyone always petting him. "I'd like to give him something," she said, "so I would, what I won't say." "On the bee I'll eat 'em," laughed Sissy merrily. Gertie McDowell bent down her head and crimsoned at the idea of Sissy saying an unladylike thing like that out loud. She'd be ashamed of her life to say, flushing a deep rosy red, and Eddie Boardman said she was sure the gentleman opposite heard what she said. "But not a pin cared, Sis. Let him," she said with a pert toss of her head and a piquant tilt of her nose. "Give it to him too on the same place as quick as I'd look at him." Madcap Sis with her gollywog curls. You had to laugh at her sometimes. For instance, when she asked you would you have some more Chinese tea and Jowsbury ramen, when she drew the jugs too and the men's faces on her nails with red ink make you split your sides, or when she wanted to go where she said she wanted to run and pay a visit to the Miss White. That was just like Sis Atkins. Oh, and will you ever forget her the evening she dressed up in her father's suit and hat and the burned cork mustache and walked down Tritonville Road, smoking a cigarette? There was none to come up to her for fun. But she was sincerity itself, one of the bravest and truest hearts heaven ever made, not one of your 12th things, too sweet to be wholesome. And then there came out upon the air the sound of voices and the pealing anthem of the organ. It was the men's temperance retreat conducted by the missioner, the Reverend John Hughes S.J., rosary, sermon and benediction of the most blessed sacrament. They were there gathered together without distinction of social class, and a most edifying spectacle it was to see in that simple fane beside the waves, after the storms of this weary world, kneeling before the feet of the Immaculate, reciting the litany of Our Lady of Loretto, beseeching her to intercede for them, the old familiar words, "Holy Mary, Holy Virgin of Virgins." How sad to poor Gertie's ears! Had her father only avoided the clutches of the demon drink, by taking the pledge of those powders the drink habit cured in Pearson's Weekly, she might now be rolling in her carriage, second to none. Over and over had she told herself that as she mused by the dying embers in a brown study without the lamp because she hated 2 lights, or oftentimes gazing out of the window dreamily by the hour at the rain falling on the rusty bucket, thinking. But that vile decoction which has ruined so many hearths and homes had cast its shadow over her childhood days. Nay, she had even witnessed in the home circle deeds of violence caused by intemperance, and had seen her own father, a prey to the fumes of intoxication, forget himself completely. There was one thing of all things that Gertie knew, it was that the man who lifts his hand to a woman save in the way of kindness, deserves to be branded as the lowest of the low. And still the voices sang in supplication to the Virgin most powerful, Virgin most merciful. And Gertie, wrapped in thought, scarce saw or heard her companions or the twins at their boyish gambols, or the gentleman off Sandy Mount Green that Sissy Caffrey called the man that was so like himself passing along the strand taking a short walk. You never saw him anyway, screwed but still, and for all that she would not like him for a father, or because he was too old or something, or on account of his face, it was a palpable case of Dr. Fail, or his carbuncle nose with the pimples on it and his sandy mustache a bit white under his nose. Poor father. With all his faults she loved him still when he sang "Tell me, Mary, how to woo thee," or "My love in cottage near Rochelle," and they had stewed cockles and lettuce with lies and beef salad dressing for supper, and when he sang "The Moon Hath I Said" with Mr. Dignam that died suddenly and was buried, God have mercy on him, from a stroke. Her mother's birthday that was, and Charlie was home on his holidays, and Tom and Mr. Dignam and Mrs. and Patsy and Freddie Dignam, and they were to have had a group taken. No one would have thought then it was so near. Now he was laid to rest. and her mother said to him to let that be a warning to him for the rest of his days, and he couldn't even go to the funeral on account of the gout, and she had to go into town to bring him the letters and samples from his office about Catesby's courtly, artistic, standard designs, fit for a palace, gives tip-top wear and always bright and cheery in the home. A sterling good daughter was Gertie, just like a second mother in the house, a ministering angel too, with a little heart worth its weight in gold. And when her mother had those raging, splitting headaches, who was it rubbed the menthol cone on her forehead but Gertie, though she didn't like her mother's taking pinches of snuff, and that was the only single thing they ever had words about, taking snuff. Everyone thought the world of her for her gentle ways. It was Gertie who turned off the gas at the main every night, and it was Gertie who tacked up on the wall of that place where she never forgot every fortnight the chloride of lime, Mr. Tunney the grocer's Christmas almanac, the picture of halcyon days where a young gentleman in the costume they used to wear then with a three-cornered hat was offering a bunch of flowers to his lodger love with old-time chivalry through her lattice window. You could see there was a story behind it. The colors were done something lovely. She was in a soft clinging white in a studied attitude, and the gentleman was in chocolate, and he looked a thorough aristocrat. She often looked at them dreamily when she went there for certain purpose, and felt her own arms that were white and soft just like hers with the sleeves back, and thought about those times because she had found out in Walker's pronouncing dictionary that belonged to Grandpa Pogletrap about the halcyon days what they meant. The twins were now playing in the most approved brotherly fashion till at last Master Jack, who was really as bold as brass, there was no getting behind that, deliberately kicked the ball as hard as ever he could down towards the seaweedy rocks. Needless to say, poor Tommy was not slow to voice his dismay, but luckily the gentleman in black, who was sitting there by himself, came gallantly to the rescue and intercepted the ball. Our two champions claimed their plaything with lusty cries, and to avoid trouble Sissy Caffrey called to the gentleman to throw it at her, please. The gentleman aimed the ball once or twice and then threw it up the strand towards Sissy Caffrey, but it rolled down the slope and stopped right under Gertie's skirt near the little pool by the rock. The twins clamored again for it, and Sissy told her to kick it away and let them fight for it, so Gertie drew back her foot, but she wished their stupid ball hadn't come rolling down to her, and she gave a kick, but she missed, and Eddie and Sissy laughed. If you failed, try again, Eddie Boardman said. Gertie smiled assent and bit her lip. A delicate pang crept into her pretty cheek, but she was determined to let them see, so she just lifted her skirt a little bit, just enough, and took good aim and gave the ball a jolly good kick, and it went ever so far in the two twins after it down towards the shingle. Pure jealousy, of course. It was nothing else to draw attention on account of their gentleman opposite looking. She felt the warm flush, a danger signal always with Gertie McDowell, surging and flaming into her cheeks. Till then they had only exchanged glances of the most casual, but now under the brim of her new hat she ventured to look at him, and the face that met her gaze there in the twilight, wan and strangely drawn, seemed to her the saddest she had ever seen. Through the open window of the church the fragrant incense was wafted, and with it the fragrant names of her who was conceived without stain of original sin. Spiritual vessel, pray for us. Honorable vessel, pray for us. Vessel of singular devotion, pray for us. Mystical rose and careworn hearts were there, and toilers for their daily bread, and many who had erred and wandered, their eyes wet with contrition, but for all that bright with hope, for the Reverend Father Hughes had told them what the great Saint Bernard said in his famous prayer of Mary, the most pious Virgin's intercessory power, that it was not recorded in any age that those who implored her powerful protection were ever abandoned by her. The twins were now playing again right merrily, for the troubles of childhood are but as fleeting summer showers. Sissy Caffrey played with baby Boardman till he crowed with glee, clapping baby hands in air. She cried behind the hood of the pushchair, and Eddie asked where was Sissy gone, and then Sissy popped up her head and cried out. And, my word, didn't the little chap enjoy that? And then she told him to say Papa. Say Papa, baby. Say pop 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 pop. And baby did his level best to say it, for he was very intelligent for 11 months, everyone said, and big for his age, and the picture of health, a perfect little bunch of love, and he would certainly turn out to be something great, they said. Haja haja. Sissy wiped his little mouth with the dribbling bib and wanted him to sit up properly and say pop pop pop, but when she undid the strap she cried out, Holy Saint Dennis, that he was passing went into double the half blanket the other way under him. Of course his infant majesty was most obstreperous at such toilet formalities, and he let everyone know her ba and two great big lovely big tears coursing down his cheeks. It was all no use soothing him with no, baby, no, and telling him about the Gigi and where was the puff, but sis, always ready with it, gave him in his mouth the tea of the sucking bottle, and the young heathen was quickly appeased. Gertie wished to goodness they would take their squalling baby home out of that and not get on her nerves, no hour to be out, and the little brats of twins. She gazed out towards the distant sea. It was like the paintings that man used to draw on the pavement with all the colored chalks, and such a pity to leaving them there to be all blotted out. The evening and the clouds coming up in the Bailey light on Hoth, and to hear the music like that and the perfume of those incense they burned in the church like a kind of waft. And while she gazed, her heart went pit-a-pat. Yes, it was her he was looking at, and there was meaning in his look. His eyes burned into her as though they would search her through and through, read her very soul. Wonderful eyes they were, superbly expressive, but could he trust them? People were so queer. She could see at once by his dark eyes and his pale intellectual face that he was a foreigner, the image of the photo she had of Martin Harvey, the matinee idol, only for the mustache, which she preferred because she wasn't stage-struck like Winnie Rippingham that wanted they two to always dress the same on account of a play, but she could not see whether he had an aquiline nose or a slightly brow save from where he was sitting. He was in deep mourning, she could see that, and the story of a haunting sorrow was written on his face. She would have given worlds to know what it was. He was looking up so intently, so still, and he saw her kick the ball, and perhaps he could see the bright steel buckles of her shoes if she swung them like that thoughtfully with the toes down. She was glad that something told her to put on the transparent stockings thinking Reggie Wiley might be out, but that was far away. Here was that of which she had so often dreamed. It was he who mattered, and there was joy on her face because she wanted him, because she felt instinctively that he was like no one else. The very heart of the girl woman went out to him, her dream husband, because she knew on the instant it was him. If he had suffered, more sinned against than sinning, or even, if he had been himself a sinner, a wicked man, she cared not. Even if he was a Protestant or Methodist, she could convert him easily if he truly loved her. There were wounds that wanted healing with heart balm. She was a womanly woman, not like other flighty girls, unfeminine he had known, those cyclists showing off what they hadn't got, and she just yearned to know all, to forgive all if she could make him fall in love with her, make him forget the memory of the past. Then mayhap he would embrace her gently, like a real man, crushing her soft body to him, and love her, his honest girlie, for herself alone. Refuge of sinners. Comforters of the afflicted. Or pro nobis. Well has it been said that whosoever prays to her with faith and constancy can never be lost or cast away, and finally is she to a haven of refuge for the afflicted because of the $7 which transpierced her own heart. Gertie could picture the whole scene in the church, the stained glass windows lighted up, the candles, the flowers, and the blue banners of the Blessed Virgin's sodality, and Father Conroy was helping Canon O'Hanlon at the altar, carrying things in and out with his eyes cast down. He looked almost a saint, and his confession box was so quiet and clean and dark, and his hands were just like white wax. If ever she became a Dominican nun in their white habit, perhaps he might come to the convent for the Novena of Saint Dominic. He told her that time when she told him about that in confession, crimsoning up to the roots of her hair for fear he could see, not to be troubled because that was only the voice of nature and we were all subject to nature's laws, he said, in this life, and that was no sin because that came from the nature of woman instituted by God, he said, and that our Blessed Lady herself said to the Archangel Gabriel, "Be it done unto me according to thy word." He was so kind and holy, and often she thought could she work a ruched ticosy with embroidered floral design for him as a present or a clock, but they had a clock she noticed on the mantelpiece, white and gold, with a candelabra that came out of a little house to tell the time the day she waited there about the flowers for the 40 hours adoration, because it was hard to know what sort of a present to give, or perhaps an album of illuminated views of Dublin or someplace. The exasperating little brats of twins began to quarrel again, and Jack threw the ball out towards the sea, and both ran after it. Little monkeys common as ditch water. Someone ought to take them and give them a good hiding for themselves to keep them in their places, the both of them. and Sissy and Eddie shouted after them to come back because they were afraid the tide might come in on them and be drowned. Jackie. Tommy. Not they. What a great notion they had. So Sissy said it was the very last time she'd ever bring them out. She jumped up and called them and she ran down the slope past him, tossing her hair behind her, which had a good enough color if there had been more of it, but with all the thingamary she was always rubbing into it, she couldn't get it to grow along because it wasn't natural, so she could just go and throw her hat at it. She ran with long gandery strides. It was a wonder she didn't rip up her skirt at the side that was too tight on her, because there was a lot of the tomboy about Sissy Caffrey, and she was a forward piece whenever she thought she had a good opportunity to show him. Just because she was a good runner, she ran like so that he could see all the end of her petticoat running and her skinny shanks up as far as possible. It would have served her just right if she had tripped up over something accidentally on purpose with her high crook French heels on her to make her look tall and got a fine tumble. Tableau. That would have been a very charming expose for a gentleman like that to witness.